Hi, welcome to today's episode of A Couple of Things,
a daily podcast about things.
hosted by Ladi Tawak. And today we have a special guest. Let's get into it. Hi.
Hi.
So what are we talking about today?
I don't know. You first. It's your podcast.
Okay. So we were just talking about culture shock or relocating. So I guess that's what we should talk about.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, cool. Oh, also, I forgot to introduce who the guest is. But no, the guests always introduce themselves. So please introduce yourself.
Okay, good evening, Lade. My name is Nnanna. Nice to be here.
Who is Nnanna?
Some random person you met on the internet.
Really? Okay. All right, let's get into the culture shock.
Okay, we've been abroad for almost 3 years now, and of course, moving from Lagos, what are some of the things that have stood out or that probably shocked you when you first experienced them and still stand out now in comparison?
So I don't think for me, it's not really culture shock. It's more like life and the environment shock, like the weather. The weather was a shock. I moved in winter. We moved in winter. And oh my God, it was getting dark at whatever time it was. Not normal for me, for my
4 p.m.,
Nigerian
5
brain.
p.m.
Exactly. And it still shocks me even now, like that it gets dark early in winter and it gets dark really, really late in summer, which I absolutely hate. And I've talked about
10:30
already.
p.m.
11 sometimes, you can
Yeah.
still see the sun. It's ridiculous. So that shocked me. And it was more of my brain. Till now, I can no longer look outside and tell the time. That was the thing I could do when I was in Nigeria. Like I could look outside. I didn't need to look at a clock or a watch or anything. I could just look outside and I would instinctively know within like a 30 minutes range of accuracy what time it was. But now I don't. And it's very annoying. That's like the main thing. And it's not really culture shock. It's just the vibe of the place.
I think another thing I hated about that is on some days at 9 a.m. it's still pretty dark, so it looks like
Yeah.
6 a.m. and like, why is this happening?
6 a.m. or like 4 a.m. more like. I remember the first week we were here and I was in the hotel that we were in when we were still house hunting. I remember looking out the window and I was like, oh, it's still early. I can go back to sleep. And it was a work day. And the next thing I know, my phone was ringing and I was like, what is happening? Turned out it was like 9 a.m. already. And I looked out thinking it was like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or something. So what for you has been an actual culture shock?
There's so many things. Well, if beating me to the weather, so I'm going to probably say workplace. The people you work with or the people I work with, I was actually telling someone that today as well, they take proper full 1 hour breaks. My problem with that is that those full 1 hour lunch breaks happen at 12 p.m. in the middle of the day. Like the day's just starting, you're probably settling into the groove of the day because that's probably when you finished all those morning meetings and you're about to start working properly and get into deep work, and someone is coming to your table and saying, hey, you want to grab lunch? I'm like, dude, work just started. And first time I joined for lunch thinking it's going to be like a 15-minute thing. After it's 12 o'clock, we're coming back to the office at 1 o'clock, 1:30. How am I supposed to still get any work done?
Yeah, I also found that very interesting because also for me, my office was like closed for a while. They were opening a new office, so I didn't go to an office for like the first 3 or 4 months. And we went for lunch. I was like working, and then around 12 or just to 12, just after 12, someone comes and was like, oh, we're going to get lunch. I'm just like, what? Lunch is 2 o'clock. What do you mean lunch is at 12? This is breakfast. What are we doing? So I also found that very interesting. I still don't get it. Sometimes I go with my colleagues, even though I'm not having any food. I just go with them to buy whatever they're buying, and we all sit at the table. And they actually, like, it's true, we just sit down there for like 1 hour eating and talking. And then everybody's like, okay, time to go back to work. So I find that very interesting as well.
Another thing I don't like, or that has shocked me here, that I don't like that is now part of my life here, is like Sundays in general, like church. Like back in Nigeria, I used to go to church by 7 a.m. Then on some days I'll do 8 a.m. for like a different church. So either way, by 10 or by 12 you're done with church, the church part of Sunday. But here church starts 10, 11, and could end anywhere from 2 to 4. So in that regard, you find that's like church is now something that has happened in the middle of the day rather than at the beginning of the day. And then you don't have a sense of what to do next with your Sunday.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it wasn't much of a shock for me because, like, yeah, when I was in Nigeria, when I was in Unilag, I went to Covenant Christian Center for a bit, and they used to have the 7 a.m. service, or was it 7:30? Very, really early service, and I used to be back in my hostel before 10 most Sundays. But here, the church that we used to go to before used to start at 12:30 p.m. in the afternoon. That was the first service. And then I met you by like 4:30 sometimes. It wasn't that big of a deal for me. It wasn't that much of a big deal for me, but it was for you.
Because like a whole
Yeah, it's
change,
like
a whole lifestyle change
yeah,
in that regard.
entirely different. But me, I actually didn't mind it so much because it meant that I could sleep in early, like sleeping on Sundays. I could wake up at 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and still not be late for church. So I like that. So, but now we go to a church that starts at 10 and ends by 12.
12-ish.
Yeah, and so we're home by 12:30. We at least 12:31, depending on how long we stay to talk with people after church.
It's mostly 2 o'clock, but yeah.
We've not come home by 2 o'clock before.
I think the final thing we're probably going to share for now is the whole ease of travel. I mean, everyone talks about how traveling within Europe is easy, but you don't notice it until you do it. Like, I remember the first time we got on a plane here. So I think first time we got on a plane, and then you're like, why didn't you stamp my passport? Like, what do you mean I'm not getting a stamp on
I
my
should just be
passport?
going inside.
I should just be
No,
going
it was
inside.
even when we came because there was a transfer
Yeah.
from I think France.
Yes.
So
like, what do you mean I should just enter
were
the
stamped in
country?
France?
Yes, stamped
exactly.
in France. So
but
what?
then in Berlin it was like
No, like, what do you mean I should just enter the
I should be
country?
going.
Like, you didn't even check me out. Then you're now going to another country, either via train, via plane, and like nobody's asking you anything. You can literally get on a plane, get on a train, get on a bus, get a car, and go to the next country, and nobody's going to ask you anything. And I'm like, Ghana, Benin Republic, Togo,
what's up?
you guys are next door, and I have to go through a whole process. What's happening?
Yeah, so that was also interesting for me. The first time I went by train somewhere, at least even in the airport, if you're flying at the counter, they will still ask you for your passport and to show your visa and whatever. But by train, nobody asks you anything. You literally just get on a train and enter and be going. I mean, once in a while, I've had like random checks where they do random checks on the train or on the bus. But for the most part, it was so shocking to me that I could literally just get on a train and be somewhere.
I can literally go to a country or 3 countries and come back, and there is no record that I went to these countries. Like, no record. It's not stamped on my passport. No quote footprints. So when next I'm filling out a visa for like US or UK or all those places that require your entire travel history, how am I to prove, or what's the proof that I went to a country that I said I've been to?
I guess the assumption is that if you live in the Schengen area, I've gone to all the countries in the Schengen area, basically. So you don't have to prove it. You can go. But yeah, I found that very interesting. And then the first time that I traveled to the UK after experiencing visa-free travel and everything, I was so confused because, like, after all the times of just enter, just come out, just go, they were not asking me for passport and stamp and all those things. I was like, ugh. But yeah, visa-free travel is the thing. Although there's another side. There's some trouble with the whole it's so easy to travel within Europe narrative. It depends. So are you traveling, if you have a car or you're able to rent a car and you're driving, then maybe it's easy travel. But if you're traveling by train, depending on what you're going to, it could be a bit of a journey and a weird trip. Like, one of my friends lives in Ziegen, or she used to live in Ziegen, which is like this very tiny place in Germany that even people from Germany, when I tell them that I've gone there, they're like, what? Why do you go to Ziegen? Anyway, to get to her house or to her city is a long journey. It's like ridiculously long. You have to enter like 3 trains or 4 trains or something. And this is a 4-hour drive if you're driving. So traveling within Europe is also not as easy as people make it out to seem, and it's also not as cheap as people make it out to seem. Um, on the flip side, so those were the shocks with traveling within Europe for me.
I think a final thing I just remembered now, because of how easy it is to travel, like easy in the context of you can just pack your bags and go and nobody's going to ask you a question, you're probably going to one day forget to travel with your passports. And that's a story
Don't do
for another day.
that. Do not do that. Please, if you are traveling within Europe, go with your passport and your residence card if you have. Go with both documents, because Abike Dabiri cannot help you as a Nigerian if they will send you back to
Who's
your
that?
country. They will actually send you back to your country. Don't do it. Okay. And that's it for today. I think it sounds like most of the things that the shock was around timing, really, like mostly time related things, like when church starts, knowing the time,
When the sun goes down.
when the sun goes out, like all those kind of things. It was more about time. And I think that's very interesting for us. But anyway, that's it for today.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Couple of Things. If there was anything you found interesting or insightful, or you enjoyed the episode, please do share to someone or multiple people. Like, leave a comment, and definitely do subscribe and all the nice things. Bye. Here is your regular reminder that I am accepting questions and topic suggestions. Also, you can now nominate yourself or someone else to be featured on the podcast to talk about anything that you find interesting. And you can do all of this, whether submitting a question or nominating yourself or someone, through the link in the show notes.